Hey UConn Nation, it's KK Arnold here. If you're looking for the latest UConn women's basketball content, go subscribe to Listen Up to Phil and Ryan. Go Huskies!
Phil and Ryan, listen up. Ryan, we get a special guest. It's been a long time coming, almost over a year, Ryan. Please welcome everybody. Welcome Jason back to Listen Up. We appreciate him for joining us in this big win. Now's the time that I get to sit back and relax while I hear Jason and Ryan go over this beautiful game recap. Final score 67-46. Huskies over the Villanova Wildcats. And my, oh my, Ryan, a lot to talk about. And this time, I can't wait to get to comments because now I get to read Jason's comment from the last video and hear you two debate back and forth.
I think I'm going to get in trouble for that one.
Ryan?
Yeah, well, like Jason said before we started recording, he started to sweat it, and I honestly did too, especially during that fourth quarter. But final home game here tonight for in Stores, Connecticut. Paige got us started early with the two buckets. Aaliyah doing her thing down low as always. Paige and Aaliyah are going to be the ones to lead UConn moving forward, and that was definitely the case here in tonight's game as well. I really like UConn's on the ball defense. They got in Nova's passing lanes. UConn struggled on offense in the first quarter, let Nova back into the game a little bit. Nika Mule had a little injury scare. I'm sure, Jason, you were sweating watching that during that play as well. Looked like she bumped legs with Olsen, and it looked like Nika was grabbing her hamstring, but fortunately, she was able to return during the second quarter. Offense started to pick it back up just a little bit for the Huskies. And I think, the UConn's kind of at their best, especially on offense, when players are kind of just out there shooting, being confident, making plays for themselves. I noticed a couple of times in tonight's game, they were trying to force the ball a little bit to Aaliyah, making some bad passes, some silly mistakes, but that's kind of when they start to struggle a little bit. But tonight's game was fast paced for the most part, as are most of these UConn games. And for the most part, too, when these two teams meet up with each other, things start to get a little chippy there. They did a little bit at the end of that second half. Jason, I don't know if you have any halftime remarks, but UConn up at 11 at the half.
Yeah, I just think the game was getting a little chippy, definitely,
Yeah.
especially between Paige and Olsen. Woo! I thought I thought they were going to throw down that one play. Paige was really looking for a fight there. She really was. But I think the big problem with UConn in that first half was missed layups. They had a lot of opportunities right underneath the basket, and they just didn't hit their shots. I mean, I think KK went up for a couple of layups and short-armed it. But I think the game was a little bit closer than it needed to be. But yeah, go ahead.
And I see where Ryan, and I see where just very, very quickly Bueckers drops 31. But I had an alert come through when we were trying to get the technical issues fixed, and Bueckers has 17th career 25-point game, tying Katie Lou Samuelson for fourth most by UConn player over past 25 seasons. So I think Jason, it's arguably, and Ryan, it's arguably well, I'm going to say arguably. I we know what she's capable of. We've seen times where you're not going to come out every game and just shine and put 30 or 40, especially in college. I mean, I might be a little bit biased when I say that. I like what I see as far as leadership right now from Paige Bueckers. We always talk about how she performs, but as far as a leadership standpoint, and obviously it's easier for me to say that she scored 31 tonight, but coming to the end of February and seeing how she's playing right now, if you can just try to get maybe Ice Brady heated up a little bit more, or just not even the whole roster, just a couple more players that have breakout games come next month, I get a feeling, man, that we'll see some stuff that we haven't seen all year, as far as good stuff, that is.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and I have to say tonight, it was a very weird night, even though Paige, I believe that's six straight 25-point games for Paige Bueckers, I believe. But tonight, it seemed like a weird night on offense. They had moments where it seemed like they couldn't miss. They went on 8-0, 9-0 runs. And other times in the game, they go about 3 or 4 minutes without scoring. But luckily, on defense, they addressed, or they were on point, rather, the whole entire game. Kind of kept Villanova in check for the most part. And another thing I wanted to point out was the fouls as well. Paige picked up her fourth foul in the third quarter, had to sit for the last 5 minutes of the third. And I'm a little worried, Jason, about foul trouble when it comes to March, especially with the lack of depth.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm not as worried for Paige because the two of those fouls were just awful calls.
Yeah.
I don't like to say that with refs because it's tough being a ref.
Yeah.
But two of those fouls were just why? I mean, with all and then to not call the push on Aaliyah when she pushed her into the box, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what was that about? But yeah, I just think a couple of those calls were sketchy. I'm not worried about Paige, but you are right. The fouls could get us in trouble in March. Definitely.
Yeah, Christina Dulce always seems like she causes a couple problems for for UConn when these two teams get together. But on to the final quarter, it seemed like UConn couldn't really pull away in this game. Villanova pulled within 7 in the final quarter, and we just had that episode about UConn being worthy of the top 10 spot. We backed them up and said they're kind of starting to get everything sorted out. Seems like they're playing together. Tonight, it kind of seemed like at moments, it seemed like the opposite of that. Really looked out of sync, especially in that fourth quarter. But always, Jason, it seems like when I bring up all these negatives about UConn during these game recaps, they totally prove me wrong and play their best basketball of the night, have a huge scoring run. And that's what happened towards the end of this fourth quarter and kind of propelled them to the 67-46 win tonight.
Guess who came back in the game?
Yeah, Paige Bueckers. Yeah.
If you want a use case on just how great Paige is, see what
Yeah.
happens when she's out for 4 minutes, and then see what happens when she's in for 5, for the rest of the game. And she did it with 4 fouls, not fouling, and was able to be the leader that she is. And it was fantastic to watch. It was really it just really showed who she is and what she means to this team.
And that's the reason why, Jason, Ryan, we keep our fingers crossed, right? Because we can, we want to forget them performances, like especially against Notre Dame, and you can go on and on this season, specifically. But when they take Paige out of the game, and Jason's right, you can see what happens, even if she's on the floor. When teams are able to take her out of the game, and unfortunately, yes, some teams are good at doing that. We saw it this season. That's trouble, So all we can do is cross our fingers and hope for the best as far as once this Big East tournament and then the bigger tournament, March Madness, rolls around. Specifically, Jason, on this one, and we're going to remember this night for a long time, right? Especially not only because of this big win, but because of Jason being with us tonight. And it's just so fitting. Yeah, it's just so fitting because she scores 31, UConn wins. Not only this, how about this for Jason, Ryan? UConn women's basketball gets presented with the Big East regular season trophy post game. And that's thanks to Daniel V. Connolly on X for providing us that. How about Maggie Vanoni? She also said, how about this, Jason? Bueckers addressed the crowd and thanked them. On the other hand, KK Arnold, our good friend, ran into the student section and started jumping up and down celebrating. So what an atmosphere.
Energizer bunny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ryan, all around great performance. And again, you get the feeling again, it's starting to you can't forget about the injuries that happened this season, but you get the feeling that all of a sudden, man, the momentum is drawing in at the right time.
Yeah, it kind of does have that feeling. And like I said, it kind of seemed like UConn couldn't really grab the momentum tonight. But I think the most important thing is throughout the whole entire season, they never give up. They always stay in the game, no matter how much they might be up or how much they might be down. They're always staying in the game, always staying confident. They can come back or hold on to the lead and eventually pull away, which is really good to see, especially going into the tournament. And that's a trait I think they can really use to their advantage.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to know how many minutes Aaliyah sat out tonight. It couldn't have been a lot.
I don't think, it wasn't that much. And I think that's also going to be interesting too with the lack of depth because all these starters having to play the minutes because like we saw tonight when Anika and Paige aren't on the floor, we can see what kind of unfortunately happened where UConn starts to struggle a little bit.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that about Amari, but I think that's for another day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a good point he brings up. And Ice Brady, I mean, if she can heat up along with Aaliyah Edwards, because Edwards, the play that we've seen from Aaliyah so far all year, yeah, it can just, like I said, hopefully not all on Paige Bueckers, but man, if we can get a couple more players heated up at the right time, yeah. And Bueckers also spoke, Ryan, to the crowd, and Jason, she said we're hoping to host the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament, so we're gonna need you guys back. Well, at least I can guarantee you she has Jason D'Amico's back as this big run continues as we flip the calendar to March. Let's go over to comments and how ironic. We're going to read Jason D'Amico's from the last video. He said, if I had to throw my hat in the ring, I would put them at 13th. When it comes to March Madness, the only winners are those with depth. Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks. It's okay to say their name, Phil. Laugh out loud. Learned this from earlier UConn successes against them and now live by it. Dawn Staley's word, not mine.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with it. And like I said, you could really make the argument for a couple of teams.
Better not disagree with it, Rye.
No, never.
Here we go. This is what I was waiting on this time right here. No. Ryan, now you have somebody else to talk to about comments.
No, but for sure. I mean, yeah, definitely make the case for a couple of teams over UConn. And I hope UConn does use that and learn from that experience, that tough loss to South Carolina. I really hope they can use that to their advantage because, especially because of all the freshmen really learning from that experience and using that as we move forward, not only for this season, but for seasons to come, but specifically for this season as we do go into March. Hopefully they can use that to their advantage when they do play a couple of these tough games, and maybe that can perhaps propel them to go maybe a little further than what we're expecting.
I want Jason, anything to elaborate on your own?
I do actually. I do. I gotta say it. I have to say it because it's got to be said. I think the lack of cultivation of Amari DeBerry this year is one of the biggest colossal mistakes that this team made. I know that everyone said, like, if you read the comments all year, people saying, well, she's not it. She's not who she thought who we thought she was going to be, but she's a good player. We've seen it. Mm-hmm. And I think if we're going to get past South Carolina, we need her. Aaliyah can't do it alone. They have too much depth. We needed her. And I just think if we're going to have a weakness, if we get to that point, I think we really could have used her. But an experienced Amari, not what we have now.
Yeah, that's a whole. I feel like he brings up a good point, Ryan. I feel like having just a video by itself this all season, maybe Jason will tell me I'm going too far with this one, but maybe not to put blame on one specific person, but what just happened? What happened? If you understand what I'm saying, but other than is it a group? I don't like to use the word blame either, but to blame for her development, has she not developed enough? Has she, what? And I mean, do you put it on one person? We most likely probably won't ever know, but I mean, it's interesting to throw them options out there and that leads to further conversation down the road, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it was a team decision. But...
Okay. All right. And this one also, not to put pressure on you, Jason, but this one is for you as well. And then I want to hear Ryan's take. The disruptive one said, I would say no. He's referring to the last video about if UConn is in the top, is a top 10 team. To me, UConn failed, he said, all of their biggest tests this year, UCLA, Texas, Notre Dame, North Carolina State, and South Carolina. I understand why UConn has moved up. However, all the teams ahead of them keep losing.
Well,
that's why we had that episode, because I told Ryan, I said, man, right now, these teams above UConn look very beatable, other than number one.
Listen, any given night, of course, right? But I think, UConn, they struggled earlier in the year. They had no cohesion. They're still making some of those mistakes now, but I think they're a better team now than they were in the beginning of the season. I think some of those games that they would probably win now.
Yeah.
But do they go past the Elite Eight? Oh gosh, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think they got the depth.
More sweat on it. Don't sweat
Yeah.
anymore. You're okay, Jason. Yeah, save that.
I
Save
know.
that for March.
It's a rough
Yeah,
show, fellas. It's a rough
I
show.
know. Ryan, I know we had to discuss it. It's like we keep talking about the same thing over and over again on each episode, Ryan. But it's just we just can't wait. We can't wait. We can feel it. It's almost here.
Yeah, it's tough. I really do want to believe in this team, of course, but what I think me and Phil are kind of thinking the same thing around Sweet 16, Elite Eight. I think it's going to be really tough for them to get past that point. But like you just said, any given night, anything can happen. But I'm just kind of still nervous that it was such a great game against DePaul, scoring 101 points, and then tonight, of course, only scoring 67. So. I think, somewhere in the middle there, around 75 to 80, I think it is a really good mark to score in these games if they want to win. I don't necessarily think 67 points is going to cut it against some of these elite teams. But I just think too it's a lot more mistakes than we're used to seeing at this point in the year from a UConn team. So hopefully they still got a couple weeks to clean some things up before the big tournament. So hopefully they can. But if they don't, I'm not really confident they can make a really big run.
Now, on the other hand, for you two, this one, the last one, well, actually, this is two different people, but I'll combine these comments together. This is interesting too. So this is goes against the other comment of what I just read. Kind of, this person goes, absolutely, number 10 is correct for this team at this time. That's interesting. At this time, even with all the injuries, they are still a great team and one not to sleep on. And then Doug says, at least all of UConn's losses have come against top 20 teams. You've got other programs losing to unranked opponents.
That's a good point.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for both sides for sure, and I think it's definitely interesting. I just can't really believe that UConn still has 25 wins with all the injuries. It's just really hard to believe. And like I said in that video, it's hard to believe as well. Only one game left now, and UConn could go undefeated in their conference. Me and Phil didn't predict they would go undefeated without even knowing they would have all these injuries piled on. So there's definitely an argument for both sides. But to me, it really is amazing that they've had all these wins. One game away from undefeated in the Big East. And with all these injuries.
Yeah, and no matter what injuries this team has, there is no one that wants to play UConn. They're just dangerous. Nobody wants to.
That goes along with it says, how about these latest tournament projections according to CBS Sports, and you scroll down and under Portland 4, Jason and Rye, it's UConn, Texas, USC, UConn, and LSU. Of course, they're only projections, but yeah, I kind of got that feeling as soon as I kind of had that thought as soon as Jason said that right before, that it's interesting to actually like which team in the country is actually sitting back saying, yeah, let's go, we want to see him. I don't think not that many, right? Not that many.
No, it's not.
Especially in the early rounds,
Yeah, that's right. Hey, look, all right, we'll leave it off there. Hey, Jason, just any last words? And we really while we're on, we
Really nice
really
to see you
appreciate
guys.
you. And you're one thing that Ryan pointed out too, you're so consistent, and we can't appreciate that enough. Every video we love
it.
we love to get back to you, every comment. So we appreciate all your support, and hopefully it's a very deep run in March.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right. Blessings to you and the family. And Ryan, I will see you for the finale, regular season finale. Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.